Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where, as always, we believe most high net worth individuals and their professional teams struggle to find great capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to exit your highly appreciated assets tax deferred so you can create, preserve, and grow more wealth. I'm your co-host, Pearson York, filling in for Brett Swarts. In each episode, I'm joined by some of the best wealth, business, leadership, and real estate entrepreneurs in the world to share inspiration, deal stories, ideas, and strategies so together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. We're also streaming on expertcresecrets.com, the Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel, the Kingdom Luxury Realty Facebook channel, and the Kingdom Luxury Realty YouTube channel. And our next guest, I'm real excited about. Flipped over 700 homes. He's a real estate coach out in Missouri, and he's going to give us a ton of value today. Please welcome Joe Dodge. Joe, how you doing, man?
David.
Knew
that. It's okay, man. We're going to have some fun today.
Didn't you say your middle name was Joe?
No. It's all good. David Dodge. Happy to be here.
David Dodge, dude.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm just going to call you Joe for the rest of the podcast, dude, because I think it's...
I'm not mad at you. It's all good. You can call me Joe if you want.
Dude, I think I've butchered like 90% of the names except for like John Smith, dude. Honestly, like I should be fired.
It happens to me sometimes whenever I have my own podcast as well, and it happens from time to time, man. It's all good, though.
When I come on, you can call me Pierre or something, and we'll be even. Awesome. All right. Well, David, tell me a little bit about your backstory. How'd you get to where you are?
Yeah, definitely, man. So I'm 37 years old, and I started investing in real estate at the age of 20. And I was in college. I was using a method or a strategy back then called house hacking. So I'd go find a property that I wanted to buy, and I'd go get a loan and live in one of the bedrooms and rent out the rest of the bedrooms. And that, basically either allowed me to live for free or very, very cheaply, like maybe $100 a month, something like that. And I actually did that 3 times while I was in school. And then the next couple of years out of school, throughout the rest of my 20s, I was actively buying about a rental property a year. So all through my 20s, from the age of 20 all the way through, 29, 30 years old, I was buying rentals. I was doing it very passively, though, about 1 a year on average. I think at the age of 30, I maybe had 12 rentals. So got lucky two years out of 10 and bought 2 instead of 1. But, I did it kind of the wrong way when I look back. Hindsight's always 20/20. And, I didn't necessarily do it the right way. And the reason I say that is because this is how I did it. Pierce, I would locate an agent first. That would be step 1, find an agent. Step 2, have that agent go to the MLS and start sending me properties that fit my buying criteria and then areas that I liked. And then I would weed through a couple of those, maybe even go view a couple of them. And then I'd start making offers on those properties. And, I'd get those properties under contract. And then I went to the bank. That was the process. Agent, MLS, offer, contract. Now that you have an accepted contract or accepted offer, you go to the bank. The bank says, yeah, we'll lend to you, but we're going to only give you an 80% loan. And that was fine. So I would have to come up with 20%. And in the beginning, I didn't have the 20%. The average house that I was buying through my 20s was about $150,000 property. 20% of 150 is 30. So that would mean I would need to come up with 30 grand to put down to get into these properties. Well, I didn't have that. So I borrowed that money from friends and family and acquaintances the first couple of times. I'd borrow that. I'd go get a loan. I'd acquire the house. I'd live in it, and I'd rent out the rest of the rooms. It's house hacking. And then what I would do is I'd pay back that 30 grand that I borrowed to get in it over a year or two. And I did that a couple times. And then after college, I had different jobs and different entrepreneurial stints, Pierce, where I would just save the money. I'd save the 25 or 30,000 where I didn't need to borrow that to put down, but I was always getting 80% bank loans. So that's kind of like how I got started. I started out very passively. I've always wanted to own rentals, and I've always knew that owning rentals was a great way to create wealth. It's not a get rich quick game, but it's a get rich for sure game, in my opinion, if you're in it long enough. So you got to have that long-term mindset, though. You
absolutely
can't have a 1 or 2 or even a 5-year mindset. I always have a 20 or 30-year mindset. And so for the most part, that's kind of how I got started. And then at the age of 30, I'm 37 now. At the age of 30, I said, you know what? I'm tired of these different, jobs, and I had a couple businesses as well, and none of them were really super successful. So I said to myself, I'm just going to go into real estate full time. I'm going to figure this out. And I didn't really want to be an agent or a broker. And I'm actually still not one to this day. I'm just an investor.
Okay.
And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to learn everything there is to know about being an investor without being an agent, and figure out how I can do this with little to no money. And I basically stumbled across wholesaling. And wholesaling is such a great strategy because it allows you to use paperwork to control properties, and then you can then sell your interest in those properties. You don't actually have to buy a property to be able to make money on it, right? You can use paperwork to gain control. And I did that exclusively for about 3 years, maybe even 3.5 years, and did hundreds and hundreds of deals. And about 4 years ago, I kind of realized that, I started with rentals, did that for 10 years, even though it was slow. And then I got into real estate full time, and I haven't bought a rental in like 3 years. And I was like, you know what? I basically took a step back, Pierce, and I was like, wholesaling is great. It's a good way to make some easy money and some quick money. But you're just on this transaction treadmill when you're wholesaling. You do a deal, you get paid, and then you go back to the drawing board and you look for more deals. Well, I didn't really like that I wasn't really getting anywhere. I was making money, but I was just kind of spinning my tires.
Right.
So I decided about 4 years ago to get back into the rental business. And this time around, I started doing it the right way. So the wrong way is putting down 20%, buying them off the MLS, using an agent, all the things I mentioned. That's the wrong way. The reason is because if you don't have 30 grand to put down, or you can't borrow that 30 grand to put down on an 80% loan at $150,000 purchase price, you are not going to be able to get into the deal. So now what I do is I use a strategy called the BRRRR method. And the BRRRR method is an acronym. It's B with 4 R's. And what it is really, it's just a strategy that we can use as real estate investors to acquire rental properties with little to none of our own money. Now, it is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But if we execute and follow this strategy and this process step by step, what it does is it allows us to acquire the same rental that I was buying in my 20s, $150,000 purchase price, but I'm not having to put $30,000 down to acquire the asset. So the BRRRR method is my passion. Like you had mentioned, I flipped about 700 houses, so far in my career. And at this point in time, I own about 90 units that I rent out. So 60 of those are individual single family homes. And then I have about 30 apartment units as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. All right. Let me stop you there because there's a lot to unpack there. So
you got it.
You started off with house hacking, which is a brilliant strategy, right? Buying in your 20s, and you were borrowing money. You're out in the Missouri area?
I'm in St. Louis.
St. Louis. Okay. So I sold a deal in St. Louis. Should have called you. I might have.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's possible.
Who knows? I was making a lot of calls. Anyways, so you're house hacking, you're buying these deals, you're having your friends live in them, they're paying the mortgage, you're paying back the 30 grand, but that's the wrong way. Now, did you keep those, or did you?
I still have a couple of those. I actually sold a few of them off late last year.
Okay.
Just because
in 2021.
Yeah, 2021. Yeah, late 2021, and I sold a few of them off actually in January. Now that I think about it, the supply is low and the prices are up, and I wanted to pull some chips off the table.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
I'm constantly buying new ones.
Right.
But sometimes you got to pull some chips off the table. So that's what I
Sure.
did. But yeah, as of today, I think I have 92 units, give or take.
Wow. Okay. So I believe everyone has been given a set of gifts that have made them successful. What do you think are one or two gifts, superpowers that you have that have let you to be successful?
Oh, I would say number one, empathy. I have high empathy. I have the ability to put myself in other people's shoes. And I think that that's a very, very good trait to have when you're negotiating with a seller, is that. Number two, honesty and transparency. I win deals all the time and I'm not the highest bidder. And the reason is I'm super honest. I'm super transparent. I tell them what I plan to make, how I plan to make it. And I open up and, I'm really good at building rapport with people, getting them to know you, like you, and trust you. That's really what rapport is at the end of the day. So empathy, honesty, transparency, and building rapport, I think are, 4 or 5 major things that I pride myself on. I think you're muted.
So,
There you go.
okay. So the BRRRR method, right? And for those of you who don't know, buy, rehab, refinance,
Rent, refinance, repeat.
rent, refinance, repeat.
And as you get better at the BRRRR method and you start building relationships with your bankers, you can actually refinance before you rent it. However, if you are brand new and you don't have, a great relationship with either a single bank or multiple banks and credit unions, they're going to probably make you do what's called seasoning. Yeah. And that typically means that they're not going to let you refinance that loan or that property unless you've owned it for 6 months, or in some cases had it rented and prove that you know what you're doing for 6 months. So sometimes there's going to be seasoning. In fact, I had a lender call me yesterday that I've done 6 deals with this year already. And she said, hey, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but with the interest rates going up and the market in its kind of crazy cycle that we're in, we got to start doing 6 months of seasoning. And I said, all right, cool. Well, maybe I'll send you some deals. Maybe I won't, because I have a bunch of other banks that don't require that right now.
That's a conversation that's starting to pop up a little bit. And, oh, hey, we're raising your rates. And, oh, hey, like you're not getting as good at terms as you once were. Rates are crazy right now. So
yeah, and they're going to keep going up, man. I was listening to the news this morning, and they're talking about 50 basis points jumps every time they meet for the rest of the year. I think there's 4 more meetings, maybe 5. So we could basically be seeing an additional 2.5% come December.
So let's dive into that, right? Like, because you got 90 rentals, right? And what are you doing is like to prepare for what's coming down the pipe here?
Well, over the last 6 months, I've been refinancing my properties into 30-year loans. So that's been helpful. And I don't have I don't have 90 properties. I have 90 units, but that consists of probably around 65 individual properties. And so I got about 10% of those on 30 years at this point, which is nice, maybe even 15%. But the other ones that I have lately, over the last year and a half, 2 years, instead of opting for a 3-year fixed rate on a 20-year amortization that doesn't balloon, I never do loans that balloon. And the reason that I don't like the loans that balloon is because the amortization schedule is how you get wealthy. So if you don't understand amortization, you definitely need to learn that. And if you have a loan that balloons every 3 years, you're starting over on your amortization every 3 years. So what I like to do is I like to work with the local banks, local credit unions, for multiple reasons. Number one, they're going to lend what's called portfolio lending typically, meaning they're going to underwrite and originate your loan, and then they're going to keep it in-house. It's going to be part of their portfolio. They're not going to take it to Wall Street and sell that loan off. So number one, I like to use the local banks and credit unions because of that. Number two, I like to use the local banks and credit unions because they're just going to be easier to work with. You're not going to have 49 points of contact transferring from call center to call center during the underwriting stage. You're just going to be working with Jim or Tom or Todd. And that's it. It's just going to be easy. And then last but not least, the local banks love to lend to local people. That's their business, right? So if you are a local person dealing with a local bank and you're trying to buy a local property, that's their bread and butter. They want you. They love working with you. So local banks and credit unions are great, but to answer your question, over the last year and a half, we've been transferring or renewing our loans when they come due, or that's even wrong, when they renew. And we are locking in 5-year fixed rates with them versus 3-year fixed rates. Now we pay a little more for those, but with the uncertainty in the market right now, it just makes sense to do so. Also, one of the things that we've been doing, Pierce, is we have been asking for them to give us 25-year amortization terms versus 20, and that just helps with the cash flow.
Yeah, absolutely. So increasing your amortization terms, helping with your cash flow, refining if you can with local banks, so you're not having to deal with.
Yeah, we don't use any big banks. Wells Fargo, Chase, U.S. Bank, Bank of America, PNC, you name it. I avoid them like the plague. Reason is, man, they don't care about my business. Who am I? I'm just some little guy in St. Louis, Missouri that's got a few $1 million portfolio. They don't care about me. I'm nobody to them. Right. But when I walk into the credit union down the street and I tell them I own, 65 properties, they're like, we want your business. What can we do, Dave, to earn your business? So, I mean, why would I not want to work with those people versus these other people that don't care about me? I'm not, and I don't.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. So are you selling these properties then? Any
we do sometimes. We'll sell them turnkey occasionally if we don't like the neighborhood, or maybe we have a tenant that's a pain in the butt. We'll get rid of it, the property. But for the most part, we're not selling a ton. We'll sell some from time to time. We also do what's called portfolio rebalancing. So what that means is, sometimes we'll maybe get an opportunity to go buy 6 or 8 or 10 houses from a single person. And we will do that. We love doing that. And then at the same time, we may have 1 or 2 houses in a neighborhood that's declining. And it's like, you know what? We don't really like to sell our assets, but if we're going to go pick up, let's say 6 from one transaction, then we're okay selling 1 or 2 of them in the neighborhoods that aren't the best neighborhoods. So, the good ones we're obviously going to hold and keep. And as neighborhoods change, we will pivot out of those neighborhoods. And occasionally things get tight, just like all businesses. And we may have 30 or 40 grand in a rental that just went vacant. And we can just say, hey, let's just list it and sell it too. Right. So we use the rental portfolio for multiple things. Number one, it creates cash flow. Excuse me. I got a cough today. Number one is cash flow. Cash flow is great.
Yep.
Our portfolio brings in between 18 and 22,000 a month. So it averages about 20 grand a month. And that's awesome. Right. And that income is taxed less than your earned income. It's passive income. So I love the fact that we get passive income from the rentals, which is taxed less. Number two, whenever you buy rentals and you use the BRRRR method, especially when you use the BRRRR method, you're capturing equity. Again, that is, the way to do it right. So I didn't really finish that earlier, but in the beginning, I was doing it wrong because I was actually having to come up with 20%. Now what we do is we use the BRRRR method to buy, and we don't use our own money to buy. We use other people's money. So we use hard money and private money. So we actually buy the asset, right? Own it. We then rehab it. And guess what? We borrow the money from the same person that we did to buy it to rehab it. We borrow 100% of what we need, always, sometimes 110%. Buy it, rehab it. Then we go and we get it rented. And then we go to the bank and we refinance. And here's the difference. When you're going to a bank, I'm so sorry, got this cough. Whenever you're going to a bank for a purchase, they're going to say, we'll give you an 80% loan.
Right.
And they're going to lend 80% of the purchase price, assuming that purchase price is equal or less than the appraisal. If it's less than the appraisal, they're going to lend 80% of the appraisal. That's how it works, period, right? When you're using the BRRRR method, the purchase price is irrelevant. You've already bought the property. You're no longer going into a bank and saying, hey, I'd like to use you to help me buy a property. Do you want to lend me money to buy a property? Well, of course, banks like to do that, but they want to see 20% skin in the game.
Right.
So the way to avoid the 20% skin in the game and the way to not do it wrong and to do it right is to buy the property with hard or private money. Pay cash for it.
For sure.
Fix it up. Get it rented. Now you have an asset. A property that's vacant is a liability. A property with a tenant in it is an asset. If you don't know the difference between an asset and a liability, here's the simplest definition. Assets put money in your pocket.
Yep.
It's that simple. Every month, every quarter, every year, they're putting money in. They're not taking it out. They're putting it in. So once that property has been purchased, it's been rehabbed, and it's been rented, now you go to the bank and you no longer use this pitch. You no longer say, hey, Mr. Banker, I would like to buy this house over here. Can you give me a loan to buy it? Instead, you say, hey, I already own this home. It's rented. Oh, and it's rehabbed. And I would like to refinance it and get a little bit better rate. And they're going to say, great. They're not going to ask you what you paid for it. Not at all. They're going to say, great. Let's send the appraiser out, and then we're going to lend you 80% of what it appraises for. So check this out. If I can buy a property at a discount,
okay,
that's the B. Rehab it, that's the first R, which is going to also force appreciation on that property, right? And get it rented. Now check this out. When I rehab a property, I'm doing 2 or 3 things. Number one, I'm going to allow myself to get higher rent.
Right.
Because it's going to be fresh and new and clean, right?
Yeah.
Number two, I'm going to increase the value of it, which is going to help the appraisal.
Yep.
Number three, I'm bringing back neighborhoods because I'm buying houses that need a ton of work, right? So we're buying it at a discount. We're rehabbing it. Buying it at a discount, we're going to capture a little bit of equity, hopefully 15 or 20%. And then we're going to rehab it, and we're going to increase that up a little more because we're going to force appreciation. Then we're going to get it rented, top of the market rent or at a minimum market rent. Then we're going to go to the bank, and the bank's going to say, hey, we would love to refinance this loan. They're not creating new risk. They're transferring existing risk. So when banks create new risk, the underwriting process is going to be strenuous. It's going to be deep. It's going to be a lot more complex than if they are refinancing because they're piggybacking off of somebody else's risk. And they're assuming that if somebody else took the risk, that they're okay taking the risk. Yeah. It's really wild the way that works like that, but that's how they think. So to sum this up, Pierce, and not to bore you, hopefully I'm not boring you.
No.
But now when I walk into a bank and I already own a house, it's been rehabbed and it's already rented. Sometimes it may not be rented quite yet, full transparency. But if you're brand new, you're going to have to rent it first.
Right.
And I'm going to say, hey, I owe this guy money on this house that I bought. It's a great house in a good neighborhood. It's rehabbed. It's rented. But I'm paying a kind of a high rate to this guy. Would you guys be interested in refinancing this? And they're saying, hold on, you're not coming up to us to ask to purchase? You already own it? And I'm like, oh, yeah. It's already in my name. I already own it. And they're going to say, yeah, refi all day, man. When can we send the appraiser out? And they don't ask me what I paid for it. They don't care. Right. And they rarely ask me what I spent on my rehab, but occasionally they're going to want to see that I've done more than just $2,000 or $3,000 worth of work. Typically, the banks like to see 15 or 20 grand at a minimum, ideally above 20. And then they're not going to mess with you. They're not going to bother you with the purchase price. They're just going to send the appraiser out. So here's the goal. And this is how I'm going to sum this up. If you can be all in, all, purchase, rehab, holding cost, closing costs, utilities, whatever, lawn care, you name it, all in at 80% of what it appraises for or less, you can acquire an asset in the end with no money, none of your own money.
Yep.
None of it. So like you got to think that's purchase, that's rehab, that's all the holding, closing. It also includes the interest to that private or hard money lender. So for me, we try to be all in at 75% because then that other 5% difference is typically going to make up the interest that I have to pay the lender, which isn't typically calculated in until the very end.
Right.
So the goal would be at this point is to acquire rentals a couple a month at a minimum with little to no money out of pocket. So we've done several, probably 10, maybe 15, where we've actually walked with money.
Yeah.
Right. I walked on one with 53 grand. How cool is that?
That's a good deal.
Walked on one last week, literally a week ago today, now that I think about it, or last Wednesday. And I walked with 5,200. Wasn't a huge check. But I got a rental that we've acquired. It's been rehabbed and now it's rented. And I got paid to buy that deal. It's amazing. So I know that this is a podcast and a lot of people may not be watching me right now. But if you are watching me, and I'll explain, I'm sitting in front of a wall. And this wall has basically got a little Monopoly board built out on it. And this Monopoly board is how we keep track of all of our properties.
I like that.
And the average property on this board was acquired with an average out-of-pocket cost of $1,200 at refi. That's the average on the wall, $1,200. So after 3 or 4 or 5 months of cash flow, I've gotten that 1,200 back.
Right.
And I'm into these for 0. So the goal, whenever I'm doing the BRRRR method, is to borrow 100% of what I need to buy it, fix it, all the above, increase it, and gain my 20% equity. In the beginning, I was having to borrow the 20% or save it up. Now, I don't even think about 20% in terms of cash. What I do is I say, hey, I need to just buy this at a really, really good deal, fix it up, rent it. By fixing it up, not only is it going to increase the appreciation or increase the value of the house, it's going to appreciate, but it's also going to allow me to collect more rent. I mentioned that. And then I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to refi, and I'm going to get a loan this time, not on 80% of the purchase price, but 80% of the appraised value. And that's the game changer. So now I'll never go buy a property and put down 20% ever again, ever.
Yeah,
now it's like, let's find deals, let's find discounts. And let's use our brains to acquire 20% worth of value or equity in the deal and use that as the down payment versus cash out of my pocket. I love it.
Absolutely. It's a brilliant method, and it's a widely known kind of like thing in the real estate, investing world, right? The BRRRR method. And so it's phenomenal. But what it allows you to do also is allows you to keep the properties. And that's huge because when you refi, you guys don't pay taxes. And so when you're pulling cash out, if you even like, sometimes you'll cash out, like you were talking about, you pulled
tax
out
free because it's not
totally.
income, it's debt. So
Totally.
let me talk about that just for a second, Pierce, because this is one of my favorite things when it comes to real estate. Most people's goal every day when they wake up is to go make more money. And that's not a bad goal per se, but it's not a wise goal in my opinion. Reason is because the more money you make, the more money you pay in taxes. In taxes, a lot of people, if you were to ask them on the street, hey, what do you think the average person pays in taxes in terms of percentages? And they're going to say, oh, roughly about a third. And they're not wrong, but they are wrong. Here's why. They're not wrong because that's how much people typically will pay, 35% roughly, give or take, on the income that they make.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that's not where your taxation stops, right? So you're going to give away a third of your money whenever you make it. Mm-hmm. Then when you go and you spend your money, you're going to have to pay sales tax.
Yep.
And that's going to be 8 or 10, or in some cases, 12%. So you're taxed when you earn it, you're taxed when you spend it. So that 35% turned into 45% of the cost of the government being around, right? Now you buy a boat or a plane or a car or a trailer or a mobile home or a jet ski or a house.
Yep.
And you have to pay annually to own it. You got to pay real estate taxes or personal property taxes. That tax on another 5%. So now we're at 50%. And then whenever we go and we buy specialty products, not only do we have a sales tax, but we have an additional tax like cigarettes and alcohol and gasoline. And you have more taxes that you have to pay just to buy these certain products. So at the end of the day, the true amount of taxes that we end up paying is 55 to 60% when you factor in all of it.
Yikes.
It's not fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But these are the facts. It's crazy. So here's why I love the BRRRR method. Here's why I like real estate. Here's why I like rentals. All three of them, same reason. Whenever I go and I acquire a piece of real estate, a rental, and I capture 30 grand worth of equity, it's $150,000 appraised house. I'm all in at, let's say, 115, 120.
Okay.
The bank's going to lend me, 80%. So they're going to give me the money to buy it and be all in at the loan amount. But now I have this 30 grand worth of equity that I didn't have to pay for. Well, that 30 grand worth of equity isn't income. It's wealth creation.
Yep.
So I don't pay taxes on that 30 grand. I can go borrow against it via a refi or a home equity line of credit or a rolling line of credit or whatever. And I don't have to pay taxes on the borrowed money either. So my goal every day isn't necessarily to make more money because that means I'm going to have to pay more taxes.
Yep.
My goal is just to create more wealth. Wealth isn't taxed. Income is. And a lot of people don't know that.
That's a fantastic point, and it's a great segue to this question, right? So, I'm sure you are familiar with the capital gains tax and the 1031s, right? And stuff like that when you go and liquidate
Yep.
your property. So, what has been your biggest frustration with that capital gains tax or the 1031 as it stands right now?
I've only done one 1031, and I think 1031s are great. I just don't think that I'm really there in my career yet to really take the best advantage of them, because whenever I need to sell a property, I typically need the cash. I need the income. And when you 1031 it, you're deferring taxes, but you don't get the income either. So if you use 1031s, you don't have that income event or that taxable event. So sometimes having the taxable event is needed, but I think 1031s are great. I know people that use them a ton, and they're a great way to defer your taxes. One of the reasons I think 1031s are the most amazing thing is because if you keep deferring your taxes by using 1031s and then you die and you leave the real estate to your family, the basis gets reset to the market value.
Yep.
So the 1031s really, if you take 1031 and you add death on it, it's a flawless strategy to avoid paying taxes. But you got to die for that to work. So if it's something that you're trying to leave a legacy, it's amazing. But if it's just you trying to not pay taxes for you, you can't really avoid that until death. So 1031s are great. When it comes to capital gains on on real estate, obviously you're going to pay less whenever it's a long-term gain. But it can be a little tricky whenever you are a full-time real estate investor and you're buying and selling properties as your main business. Because if I sell a property and make 50 grand on it, but I have $40,000 worth of expenses in my business this month, I don't have to pay taxes on that 50 grand, because to me, it's a business, right? So really what matters at the end of the day is, what is the net income on that month? And then what percentage of that net income was short-term versus long-term? It gets a little complicated when you do this full time. I have to have a CPA help me with all this, because it's way over my head, right?
Yeah.
But if you are a passive investor and you're not buying and selling 10 houses a month like I am, then hold the property for 366 days if you can, because your taxes are probably going to be, I don't know, 40 to 50% less, give or take.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And one of the things you said, I want to just go back and touch on, because I think it was really interesting. And it was, you 1031 up until you die, and then, you can pass on a legacy. And the one thing that I would say to that is that's absolutely true, that you do get a stepped up in basis. And I think that that's a phenomenal advantage to a 1031. But if you're over the threshold of 11 million bucks, and or you're married and you have 22 million together, what ends up happening is you get taxed 40% above and beyond that 22 million mark. So if you got a property that's 22 million, that's a 40% death tax on your estate that has absolutely nothing to do with the capital gains tax. And so the 1031 is phenomenal for the capital gains tax, but the elephant in the room, right, is this, now you have this estate tax that you have to deal with if you're over that threshold.
I wasn't aware of that, but I'm glad that I learned that today. So
yeah, so one of the things that we use is so we use a deferred sales trust. And what's unique about the deferred sales trust is that it removes assets outside the taxable estate. So not only do you get to defer the capital gains tax, but you also get to defer the estate tax upon your death, because your heirs can go back in. It also provides you with the ability to cash flow, as opposed to just going right back into a hard asset like a real estate. On top of that, you can reinvest those funds in whatever you want. It's like kind of agnostic. So you don't have to 1031 into, a property. This isn't exact, and there's a lot of, language that's wrong with it, but conceptually, right, it's almost like you can kind of 1031 into a self-directed IRA account and invest in whatever you want without the time constraints either. So you get the power of the timing, you get the tax deferral, you get to move it outside the taxable estate. And it also works for crypto. It works for a business. It works for stocks. It works for commercial real estate. It works for a primary home. It works for appreciated notes. It works for anything. So it's a phenomenal strategy when it comes to
So what does it consist of to create a trust? I don't have any trusts yet.
So this is a special trust. This is a business trust that you create when you're going to have a liquidity event, right? So if you're going to go and you're going to sell something, I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman. I live out in Newport Beach, luxury realtor out here in Newport Beach. There's a gentleman who bought 2 properties back in '88 and '90 for like total of like 1.2 million bucks. He depreciated everything down to 100%. Property's right on the sand. House is worth 12 million bucks easy. Okay. He's going to sell it. Upon selling that property, okay, those 2 properties, he's going to have about $4 million in capital gains tax alone, just on that. His basis is pretty much zero, and he's got a $12 million gain, 30% of that for probably way more. Depreciation, recapture, and all that. But this guy 1031s, he's in his 80s, right? He's got to go and he's got to hold the asset, and it's got to cash flow and stuff. That's really it. He can only go back into real estate. But if he does a deferred sales trust, he can defer all those $4 million, take all the net proceeds. He can put it into the trust, invest it in super conservative, assets if he wants, cash flow out of it, go back into real estate when he finds a good deal, and he can live off the interest and be totally good to go. Completely.
So you can't pull that out of the trust though, can he?
Sure, you can pull it out.
Is it taxable at that point?
At that point, yeah, you would get taxed on it. But my question to him is like, what do you want to pull it out for? So what are you going to invest it in, right? What are you going to do with it that is gonna make that you can't do with the trust? Because you can invest in anything like you want with the trust. So the only thing you can't really do is go buy another primary home or whatever. In that case, what we would do is we would just have him do a cash out refi to the amount that he's going to want to, pay the up to his basis. Take out what he wants as a down payment. Go buy a new house with the down payment. sell the asset, right? Put everything in the trust. The cash flow from the trust, earning a 8%, 9%, 10% is going to be more than the 5.5% to 6% on the note that he's going to pay. So he's going to earn a 4% arbitrage on the difference. And then he can use that income that's coming in from the trust to qualify for a loan. And he has the down payment amount to go ahead and put it down. So now he's pulled out the equity, right? It's cash free, or it's tax free, right? He's using that to put that as a down payment. He's using the interest that he's earning on the note, right, to pay for his mortgage if he wants to do that. Plus he gets a 4% arbitrage, and he gets to invest it in whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and he gets the entire chunk at the same time. So you can diversify it and you can put it in.
So whenever you say deferred, I get the whole process there, and that sounds really neat. But is it like so then if this gentleman dies,
mm-hmm.
and then his family, his heirs, they inherit this trust, can they pull everything out of that trust tax free, or do they have to then pay taxes on his behalf?
So they step right into his shoes as the beneficiaries, and they can leverage the trust the exact same way.
Got it. But if they pull anything out, the taxes have to then be paid not only on what was owed before, but also the current gains, or no?
So the current gains will be taxed if he takes them as income, as interest earned income will be taxed as ordinary income, right? And then you start dipping into principal, and you can pay taxes. But what's unique is it's super flexible. So you can actually take, let's say you want to buy a boat, right? And the boat's $500,000. All right, we'll take $500,000 out, right? If it dip into principal, you just pay a little bit on that tax, right? So you'll pull out, I don't know, 650, whatever the math is, right? And then you go and buy your boat. Cool. And then you have the rest of it to do whatever and invest it in whatever. And it just, it's kind of like a 1031 where it's in that deferral state, right? It's in the QI, you defer it, you put it into another property, it's still deferred, but you just continue to kick it down. But it's outside the taxable estate at this point. So you're not paying that death tax when you die.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know anything about that. Thanks for the education. That's interesting.
Yeah. And you guys can all learn more about that at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. We also have a mastermind. I invited you already. I snuck your email in there and clicked send. But yeah, every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, we have that mastermind group You can come in, ask questions, get to know everybody, and learn way more about it. Ton of stuff, ton of information on the Capital Gains Tax Solutions website and all that. David, I know that we're kind of coming up on time here. Where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, definitely, man. So my website is wholesalinginc.com/rentals. That's where you can go and you can learn more about me. You can learn more about the BRRRR method.
Yep.
And if you want to book a call with my team, we would love to talk with you. My passion at this point is just to help other people and coach them and mentor them into creating a small to large portfolio, whatever they want, of course, that is going to create passive income for them. That is how we can achieve financial freedom, is by creating passive income. So my goal is just to help. It's to mentor. It's to coach. We have a great group of students at this point, and I'm always looking to help more people. So yeah, go head on over to wholesalinginc.com/rentals, and that's spelled WHOLESALINGINC.com/rentals.
Awesome. So yeah, guys, go definitely check that out if you're interested in learning how to wholesale or the BRRRR method at all, building that portfolio up for that passive wealth. And David's a phenomenal coach. So get out there and learn what he has to say. A lot of wisdom, a lot of experience, and you won't regret it for sure. So, and if you guys are interested, capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, mastermind every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And Dave, thanks so much for coming in. Do you have any final words?
Oh man, just thanks for having me. Super grateful to have this opportunity to share a little of my wisdom with your audience. And yeah, I mean, final words I would say is, when it comes to being a real estate investor, you make your money when you buy, you get paid when you sell. I mean, it's that simple. So if you're not buying deals, if you're going to the MLS and you're paying retail like I did for the first 10 years, and I refer to that as the wrong way, it's going to be difficult to make money in real estate in the short term. If you hold it for a long enough time, you're probably going to make some money. But if you can buy deals from the get-go, you can turn around and you can sell those properties right away. So you make your money when you buy, you get paid when you sell.
Yeah, absolutely. Wise words, wise words. So, and thanks again, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Deferral Podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who work with them struggle to clarify their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to exit your highly appreciated assets so you can create, preserve, and grow more wealth. Please rate, review, and subscribe. And thanks again, everybody. We'll see you